Howdy guys, Bookie Laura here. The end of October is half term for schools, which means I finally get a break from work and a chance to go and do stuff. And October half term, me and my son went on holiday to Brighton, and while I was there, I thought, do you know what? Brighton is brilliant for shops. I bet it's got some cracking independent bookshops. So I researched and I visited a few, and this is my video about the independent bookshops of Brighton. So I want to just make it clear right from the start that I had intended to do this as a blog. I had this really romantic notion of filming, me chatting beforehand in Brighton and then going into the bookshops and vlog. And then I went to Brighton and realised that, you know, in Britain you can't rely on the weather. It was absolutely pissing it down. It was dreadful, it was miserable. I was going into shops peeling off layers, and I just thought, you know what? No thank you. But I did visit some of the bookshops, not as many as I intended because again the weather was disgusting and I didn't want to walk that far, but I did visit some, I did take photos, and I am going to tell you about my experiences. So the first bookshop which we went into was called Brighton Books. Now I will insert, you will have seen the photograph that I took of the outside of the shop, and I think as soon as I pulled up, or as soon as we walked up, I just felt intimidated. I think that it was the first bookshop we'd been into, so I was feeling a bit nervous. I am quite an anxious person, and so going into a quiet bookshop feeling like an intruder, you know, like, it felt very serious. It had very tall bookshelves, lots and lots of old books with, you know, handwritten labels to divide them up into different areas. It was a proper old school bookshop, and actually there was something really lovely about it. You know, there was a little sort of wooden chair and someone was sat in it reading, and then there was an old rickety staircase which went downstairs. But I felt very intimidated and very unwelcome right from the get-go. I mean, it was very quiet, as bookshops often are, and that makes me feel very anxious. I'm going in there with a 6-year-old who is absolutely mental most of the time. So I think I was already quite anxious about how he was going to behave in the shop. And then the guy behind the counter kind of looked at me and didn't smile and didn't say hello. It just felt very intimidating and unwelcome, and I don't like that feeling when you go into a shop that actually you're trying to figure out where stuff is, you know, which books do I want to look at, but you feel like you're being watched and judged, and I just want to have time where I can look around and figure out what I'm doing, and I didn't feel like I had that. So in the end we had sort of a very cursory glance at fiction, and then I got out of there really quick. So I was then very nervous about how this was going to play out. Then the next shop that we went to, thankfully, changed all that. We went into a shop called Dave's Comics. Now straight away, I knew this was obviously a comic shop, so straight away I had a more positive image in my head that this was going to be more accepting. I felt more at home, that actually graphic novels and superhero stuff I know about, a 6-year-old boy being there is going to be more normal, it's going to be more accepted, and I got this awesome vibe. The minute you walked in, there was just all these people there, you know, just completely absorbed in stuff. It's sort of, from what I was really confused about, it's actually split into 2 sections, almost like 2 different stores. The first one that we went into had it had a lot of comic books rather than graphic novels, and alongside that it had a lot of board games, you know, proper games. Although I didn't feel, you know, like 100% that's my preference in shops, I liked the board games. I got excited about a lot of the stuff. You know, there was Pokemon stuff, so my son was in his element. And then further up the street, just like 2 doors down or something, there was Dave's Comics again. And I thought, this is weird. And this one felt like more of a bookshop. It had a lot of graphic novels split into sort of age groups, and I was trying to get my son to care, but he didn't, because by the counter there was stuff about minifigures, Lego minifigures, and he just wanted to look at those. But I loved the vibe of this. It felt energetic, it felt enthusiastic, it felt colourful, and even the people that worked there, the way that they were interacting with the customers and stuff, it had a really good vibe, really positive. I could have spent an absolute fortune in there, quite easily, and actually there are a lot of things that I thought, I want to buy that, I want to buy that, I want to buy that, but having just moved house, I am not in a position to be buying a lot of stuff. I'm buying a lot of house stuff instead. So I was very restrained and didn't actually buy anything. But you know, they had signed copies of Neil Gaiman books, and they had the whole saga collection, and you know, when you just think, they had Brothers Grimm fairy tales, which I've been after a decent copy of, an adult version of the sort of original stories for ages, but I just couldn't convince myself to spend that amount of money. I'm proper tight, but I could have spent a fortune. It was an amazing shop, and I could have spent all day in there quite easily. I wish that they had that shop closer to where I live, because it was amazing. And then after that we walked sort of further up the street and went into a shop called Books for Amnesty, which had a lot of posters up, you know, about Amnesty International. It was quite clear that it was a bookshop which with the aim of raising money for charity, which is something that appeals to me. You know, it's not, you feel more justified, I don't know, particularly second-hand books. I really like the idea of it, so I felt quite positive. But when I went in, it was very quiet again. It wasn't a busy place. It wasn't like Dave's Comics. It was more like Brighton Books, and it was very quiet. That made me very nervous, and I thought, oh Lord, I know how this is going to go. So I sort of started having a quick look around, trying to find my way, and I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel judged. I felt like actually people were happy for me just to go in and mill around and figure myself out. And then I found the Shakespeare section, and knowing that ShakeTube was going on and I was missing a few of the books, I decided, right, I'm going to sit and find if there are any of them here. And while I was doing that, my son was being a 6-year-old, and the guy who appeared to be the owner, or certainly worked there, started chatting to him, and I felt all of my anxiety go away. Like, yeah, he's being completely weird, but actually, by chatting to him about what we were doing on holiday and where we'd been and how bad the weather was, I was able to then take the opportunity to look at books much more easily. And I didn't feel that, it reduced the anxiety about, am I being judged? Am I being a nuisance to these guys in this bookshop by bringing in an annoying child who's rolling on the floor? And I loved that, and it was the only bookshop that we went into that day where I did buy any books. I bought 2 Shakespeare books, and it allowed me to take part in ShakeTube for 2 weeks I wouldn't have otherwise been able to. For second-hand books, I thought the books were more expensive than I would have expected. However, knowing that it's Books for Amnesty, it kind of like, do you know what, I don't care. And then the final independent bookshop that I visited was Colin Page. I've got to be honest, I didn't go in. I mean, it looked beautiful, but it looked like, as you can see from the picture, it looked like this has got antique books, this has got expensive books in here. Brighton Books terrified me, made me feel judged and unwelcome, and I felt like this could be worse. I mean, there was nobody in there. I couldn't see an owner, I couldn't see other people browsing, and I think for me that it was just too much. It looked beautiful, but we'd been in tons of bookshops, and little man was bored, and I just felt like from my previous experiences, this isn't a shop that I want to go into. So apologies. It may well be a much more positive experience than I'd had in the other shop, but I just felt like, do you know what, this doesn't look like a shop that you take a 6-year-old into. But one thing I did notice, that all I was trying to do is take a picture of the outside of each of these shops to sort of put on the blog in place of videos, and I couldn't get a shot of the outside of Colin Page without people in it looking in the windows constantly. So there's something about it, I think, that the way it's got all the antique books and those old-fashioned looking books really appealed to people, even young children going up and talking about the books that they could see, and I thought that was lovely. And then finally, because I'm an absolute book nerd and I can't resist, even though every part of my being says go to the independent bookshops, support them, but then I really wanted to look at more books, so we went to Waterstones. Now, I love Waterstones, I really, really do, but I know that there are lots of people out there who are like, support your independent booksellers, blah, blah, blah. But this Waterstones is, oh my God, worth it for a day out. It's currently having a lot of work done, so there were lots of sections that were shut off, and, there was building work being done and what have you. But we decided that after this big trek around all the bookshops, we wanted to go and have a drink. Putting a cafe on the top floor in a massive bookshop is a smart move, because boy, by the time we trekked up all those stairs, the number of books that I had seen that I wanted to get was amazing. I mean, I resisted, but it was close. I know it's not an independent bookshop, but it's well worth a visit. It's the biggest Waterstones that I've ever been in, and I love the fact that it had a cafe too. And I sat there while we were in the cafe. There was a little sofa with a mum and I assume her son sat reading a book together for about an hour, and it was just the loveliest thing I've ever seen. And I would love to see more bookshops doing that. Maybe they do. Maybe I don't go to enough bookshops. So that was my experience of some independent bookshops in Brighton. It's not all of them. There were more on the Hove side that I didn't go to, and there was one that I'd intended to go to but was a further walk. Let me know about your independent bookshops. Are your experiences similar to mine? Do you get intimidated by them? Or are there some wonderful ones out there like Books for Amnesty that just more people should visit? I'm hoping to continue this if I ever do go on holiday again, you never know. I would love to explore more bookshops and then hopefully be brave enough and have good enough weather to vlog. So let me know if it's a video that you've enjoyed and whether or not you think I should do it again. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.